everyone. Good afternoon. State Representative Emmanuel Chris Welch here. Thank you all for joining me again for yet another one of my Sunday conversations. This week, I have a couple of my colleagues from the Illinois House of Representatives who I have the utmost respect for. I really enjoy working with these gentlemen. We also have one of our members, a good friend of mine, my neighbor to the east of me, Representative LaShawn Ford, will be joining us shortly as well. But I want to welcome two of our newest members to the House of Representatives to this conversation. I really have great respect for these folks. Let me tell you a little bit about them and why I respect what they do. Representative Kam Buckner represents the South Side. He's down there in the 26th Representative District. He joined the House in January of 2019, one of our newest members, and he has hit the ground running. Just like I did early on, he has jumped on a lot of the education committees, including appropriations for elementary and secondary education, child care access and early opportunity. He's also on the higher education community and several other communities, but really has hit the ground running. And with his background as a lawyer, former sports agent, the former executive director of World Sports Chicago, former manager of neighborhood and community relations for the Chicago Cubs, Kam is he's all over the place, and he's extremely knowledgeable, and really have a lot of respect for this good brother. How you doing, Kam?
I'm doing well, Chris. How you doing?
I can't complain, my friend. Can't complain.
Thank you for having us.
From Rockford, Illinois, we have another young representative in the House, my good friend Maurice West II. And Maurice also joined in January of 2019. I was really looking forward to working with him. He has joined the Appropriations Higher Education Committee, which my friend LaShawn Ford chairs. And Ford is joining us here. I'm going to save his introduction for last. And just let you know that Maurice is actually a product of Rockford. He even went on to become the Career Development Coordinator or Director at Rockford University before joining the Illinois House. And now he's in the House and he's representing Rockford quite well. Welcome, Maurice. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm doing good. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Thanks for joining me, guys, on a Sunday afternoon. And of course, we have the guy who's the most senior of the four of us, someone that we all learn from. He's my, as I said, neighbor to the east. He's my Senate district mate. We both make up the 4th Senate district with Leader Lightford. We both actually, people don't know this little historical fact. We actually both ran for the Illinois House of Representatives at the same time in 2006. He went on and won and made history, and I got my butt kicked in 2010.
That history is quiet. No one knew that.
Oh, yeah. We don't talk about that too much. Welcome, my good friend and mentor and seatmate, LaShawn Ford. How you doing, Rep. Ford?
Good, Leader. How are you, Mr. Executive?
Hey, Dr. Cool to you, sir.
Yeah. I see you got a big guy there that's unapologetically black.
Hey.
Listen, it is what it is, brother.
Right? That's right. That's right. No reason to apologize for who we are and what we represent. And how you guys holding up during this COVID-19? You still doing what you do, representing the communities? Ford, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm very happy that you took leadership to do this. I'm always happy to be on with Representative West and Buckner and your leadership, Mr. Welch. You're a fine family man. We all look up to you. You're a great example. And so thank you so much.
Well, thank you for joining me, Ford. I appreciate you guys. You know, we only have about 30 minutes or so, maybe a little bit over. I want to be respectful of all of your time. So why don't we just jump right into the discussion? I want you guys to just introduce yourselves a little bit to the audience. Tell them what your communities you represent and some of the things you really focus on as legislators. Why don't we start with you, Ford, since you're the senior among us?
Yeah. So I represent the 8th district, which covers the Austin, parts of Austin, Oak Park, Berwyn, LaGrange Park, North Riverside, and a little bit of Proviso. and I've been in since '07. My history is I'm a teacher by profession. I gave up teaching to become a real estate broker and developer. And I've had a career in Springfield, and I'm very happy to be representing people of the state of Illinois. And I'm grateful to be joined by really people don't understand that we have some very, very fine, conscious representatives on this stream today.
Absolutely. Representative Buckner, tell us about your community.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I represent the 26th district. And as you pointed out in the beginning, I'm a South Sider, born and raised, currently still live on the South Side in Bronzeville. But I have the pleasure of having one of the most diverse districts in the state. I go as far south as South Chicago, near the Indiana border. So South Shore, South Chicago, near the old steel yards in Chicago. And I go way up to the Gold Coast. So State and Division is my northern tip. So I encompass the entire downtown Central Business District, Streeterville, River North, as well as some very historical African-American communities like Washington Park, Bronzeville, South Shore, and Hyde Park and Kenwood.
I got a question for you right away, though. I got to ask you before Maurice talks about his community. How did a guy who grew up on the South Side, representing the South Side, explain working for the Chicago Cubs?
You know, it was a difficult conversion. I had never been to Wrigley Field until I interviewed for the job. My father would not allow it. But you know, once the Ricketts started signing my checks, the conversion went pretty easily. So I still love the White Sox. I live a stone's throw from U.S. Cellular. Or I still call it Comiskey, but I am now a diehard Cub fan.
Well, hopefully they get that game in tonight. Go Cubs.
Who are you with, Wes? Because I'm a Sox fan. We can't. Come on,
Wes, are you the tiebreaker?
No, I'm a Cubs fan, man. But see, I deliver the North, so it's like Cubs, almost Brewers for me, Milwaukee Brewers. Because I'm 20 minutes from Wisconsin, and I hail from the 67th district, and so way north in the northern Illinois, and so in the city of Rockford, I have the south side, west side, and southeast side of Rockford. So a lot of us, we either go Cubs or we go Green Bay. I'm sorry, we go Bears or go Green Bay Packers, or we go Cubs or Brewers. It's one or the other over here.
Wow. Well, we'll convert you soon enough. Definitely a hardcore Cub fan.
Oh, yeah.
Let me ask you guys, let's get serious. So I've watched all of you over the last few months. I think of the world of all three of you and a number of my colleagues in the House. Everyone's still working. No one's taking a hiatus. I think everyone's working harder than ever before. And we've had some private conversations about that George Floyd video. But I want to, bring it to the forefront. We've all seen that video. Representative Ford, what was your reaction to it, and how have things been in your district ever since?
Yeah, my reaction, there's no surprise of how law enforcement and white America that's prejudiced and racist and hateful treat Black people. So I wasn't surprised. It did hurt to see the Black man on the ground being treated like that. And many people say treated like a dog. You don't treat dogs like that. So it was very painful to see. But, I think that you all have, everyone on this call and people across have really expressed our distaste for it. And we're not letting George Floyd's life be in vain. And he is somebody that we all will always remember because he's changed America and the world.
Yeah. Maurice, how's it been in Rockford, man? Tell us about that video and how it's been in Rockford.
Well, honestly, I only seen snippets of the video. I couldn't muster the courage to watch the whole thing out of, my own personal hurt on this. And here in Rockford, unfortunately, we have a mixed bag. I am honored to be in the 67th, but we are surrounded by Republican colleagues of ours who did not speak up on this issue. I even asked them. I don't want you to say, I understand that there's an argument about what Black Lives Matter means, but can you at least say, I stand against racial injustice? And one of my colleagues said, no, I stand with the blue, boys in blue. And it's quite unfortunate because then that trickulates through the community. And so it's been a battle of having conversations with that. But at the same time, I have people coming to me saying, I need to learn more. I need to know more. I want to know what I can say, what I can do. I had a 70-year-old woman who, in tears, said, I just realized that I had white privilege. And instead of me saying to her, after all this time, you're just not realizing that, it was my opportunity to say, hey, at least you know now, build. Well, how can we now unify not just the Black community, but all communities in this discussion? So it's been, but one thing I am excited about is that the tide is turning, and this big, humongous yacht ship of injustice, the helm has some WD-40 on it, and so it's turning. It's going.
That's right.
Way. Yeah.
Rep. Buckner, you out there on the south side, man, Hyde Park area, Bronzeville, a lot going on out there. How's it been in your district since the George Floyd incident?
Yeah, I tell you what, Chris, the visual, we know that visuals are very powerful to the human mind, right? And we know that when Emmett Till was killed in 1955, that Mamie Till Mobley, his mother, decided to have an open casket so that the world could see his face and see how it was mangled and see what happened to him that day. We know that in 2014, we saw video of Mike Brown's dead body laying on that ground in Ferguson, Missouri. Here in Chicago, we saw Laquan McDonald be shot 16 times by Jason Van Dyke. All right, and so those visuals have really, I think, helped move the conversation along. But there was something different about the George Floyd video. I'm not sure if it was that we were all at home because of COVID and people have more time to be with their thoughts and their ideas. But I think seeing the effrontery or the irreverence of this officer as he slowly leaked life out of this man's body like a bike tire, and had his hands in his pocket and looked in the camera with no emotion at all. I think that changed the way a lot of people saw this. And so what I've seen in my district from top to bottom is a lot of just unrest, a lot of agitation. Just a few days ago, there was an issue at the Columbus statue in Grand Park. That's in my district. There were a number of young folks who tried to pull that down, and there were some issues that happened with cops assaulting some of the protesters. The looting that happened downtown in the Gold Coast on the Mag Mile, that was all in my district as well. But I'm also seeing the people in my neighborhood that I actually live in and talking to them about this. And it just seems that the tide has turned and nobody wants to go back to business as usual.
That's right. Hey, everyone. I am talking to three of my friends from the Illinois House of Representatives, three people who I have the utmost respect for. Representative LaShawn K, my seatmate, Representative Maurice West from Rockford, and Representative Kam Buckner from the South Side, but he worked for the Cubs. Please share this video. Share this video because these brothers have a lot of knowledge and information that you're going to want to hear and share with your friends. And we're having a good conversation here already. I wanted to ask each of them, but I want to start with Representative Buckner because he had an experience early on during the COVID-19 pandemic with the whole wearing of face masks. And I just want to ask each of you if you can share a personal experience you've had with law enforcement, and particularly as a Black man. I want to hear your perspective.
Yeah, and so the situation that happened with me was early May. I went to the store to grab some essential items. I had my mask on, I had gloves on, and as I left the store, I was approached by an officer who questioned on whether or not I bought the things that were in my cart. He asked to see my receipt and then asked for my identification. Took it back to his squad car. I'm assuming he ran it for warrants or whatever outstanding issues may be. And he came back, said thank you, gave me back my stuff, and began to walk away. And I asked him, what was the point? What was the impetus for you stopping me in the first place? And he said, look, you got a mask on. You look suspicious. He may be up to something. Representative Welch, when I came back home that day, I didn't think much about it. Later on that night, I was uncomfortable that I felt so comfortable with that happening to me. But that's because it's happened so many times in my life, right? And so, when the first time that a gun is pulled on you as a young man who grew up in a pretty dangerous neighborhood, it wasn't by a gangbanger, right, or a drug dealer. It was by the cops, and told to get on the wall and get in a lineup with the rest of your friends because you look like somebody who they said did something. And so when that is your litmus test, and that's the kind of baseline for you, being told that you look suspicious because you have a mask on, it wasn't very appalling to me for some reason. And unfortunately, that's the reality that a lot of us live in.
Exactly. Representative Ford, West Side, you've been there as long as I've known you. Any personal experiences with law enforcement?
as Attorney Buckner said, a lot of them. But, one that really comes to mind is when I was with my daughter in the car. We were on the south side of Chicago, and I had the state plates on. Of course, they didn't know what those were, but we were coming from my sister's house, and she lives on Keene Drive. And we turned, and the police detectives came behind us. Now, I'm just telling you, this is just one incident, but I'm 48 right now, so I had a lot of them. And so the police comes from behind, and they were very rude to me, and they made me get out of the car. But my daughter was in the back seat of the car. So, one, what could I be doing with my daughter in the back seat of the car? And she saw how they treated me, and it made her cry. And so that was trauma for my daughter. And I will never forget that I had to make sure that I was very calm and composed, because I had to be the father even after that incident with the police. So I complied and I did everything that I needed to do. But they racially profiled me for no reason. Yeah.
Representative West, Rockford, born and raised. Tell us about your experiences with law enforcement.
Well, I'm hoping y'all can help me to understand. Maybe I'm right. Maybe, Ford, Welch, since you guys are seasoned reps, I got pulled over a couple months ago in December, coming back from my anniversary weekend with my wife outside of my district. And as you know, we have government plates. And from the beginning, they gave me a sense of security because I knew that I felt that law enforcement would see the plates and say, okay, that's one person we should not mess with. I got pulled over and from the state police. And I said, hey, I'm State Representative West. What's going on? I showed him my driver's license. And then he asked me to prove that I was an elected official, prove that I was State Representative West. And man, thank God I had one of my IDs, the state IDs that we need to get into the Capitol, in my back seat. But what if I didn't? Because I was wearing a hoodie because we was coming back from our anniversary weekend. And so he said it's a procedure for us to ask for identification on the state side as well. I don't know if that's the case, but I asked him, isn't the fact that I announced who I was, I showed you my driver's license, and I had government plates, was that enough for you just to have a conversation with me rather than automatically thinking I'm a liar? And so even as a government official, I now see I have to still maintain that same sense of precaution when I'm out on these streets. Just because you never know what that law enforcement officer is having, like what kind of day they're having, even as an elected official.
Let me ask you this, Maurice, especially all of you guys have had experiences with law enforcement. As policymakers, as someone who has the ability to make a difference in this area, has your personal experience impacted the legislation you're personally fighting for or legislation that you're supporting?
My personal experience, I'll say thankfully no, because it could have been worse. It ended peacefully. He walked away, but I look at the fact that it's like a sense of survivor's guilt for me. Like Buckner mentioned how, with the face mask, he was questioned by a law enforcement officer. So I put my name on my face mask. And here in the city of Rockford, the name means something. My dad has the same name, and he's the chairman of the Police and Fire Commission. And I'm the state rep. So that name means something. But then I think about how there's other black men, other black women who have to wear face masks that if they put their name on their face mask, it won't mean much. And so I'm thinking about them. I'm thinking about what they're going through and what we've seen in the news. And so, for example, my latest bill was to the Breonna's Law, ban no-knock orders in the state of Illinois. So I'm doing it for those of our people who feel like they don't have a name, don't have a voice.
I like that. Representative Ford, you've been a champion on the West Side for a long time for the voiceless and people who have had numerous encounters with law enforcement. How has that impacted the legislation you filed?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much what's most important about the legislation that all of us filed is what sets us apart from our colleagues, the Hispanics and the whites. We have the ability to represent and have an understanding of each community. So I went to school at a predominantly white school from K through college. I went to the seminary, but I also have real lived experiences, which helps me understand where I come from, and I haven't left. So everything that I do deals with that American flag, saying that Black people have the exact same privilege that white people have, but I know that we haven't been able to realize it. And that's my fight, to continue to fight for what the flag that many people believe is not our friend, but it is a symbol that says that everything that my white counterpart believes and have, we can have it too. And that's my fight every day.
Well, your Twitter handle is Justice for All.
Yep.
And you make sure when we say the Pledge of Allegiance every day on the floor of the House that we make sure we emphasize justice for all.
Yep.
And I always remember that. Rep. Buckner, your experience during early days of COVID-19 back in May with the face mask in the George Floyd murder, how has that impacted you as a young legislator, and whether it's going to impact the policies you fight for?
Honestly, Representative Welch, it's legitimized to me what I already had, worked on. I know I want to tip my hat to my colleagues in the Black Caucus who are working diligently to be able to bring forward packages of bills that make sense for our community whenever it is that we do return to Springfield. But what I know to be true is that many of the bills that you will see come from us are bills that were filed before George Floyd died. Many of the bills that I've pushed, and all three of you guys have pushed, were things that happened before any of these tapes or any of this stuff happened, right? And one thing I said when the face mask incident happened was that COVID will not break us, but it will show to us what's already broken about us. And I think that that's been very, very true. So I didn't need a video. I think much like you guys, I didn't need a video or a task force or a podcast to explain to me the realities of life, right? Racism is not an event that happens, right? I spent some time in New Orleans, so a lot of my municipal government training is based on disaster preparedness, right? Racism is not like a hurricane. It doesn't just happen. It is something that is part of the ethos and the culture that we have here in this country. So what happened with George Floyd, what happened with me, just really, like I said, legitimizes the fact that these things that we've tried to bring to the forefront for a very long time need to happen so we can move our society forward.
Leader Ford, I want to ask you this question. Friday was a tough day in Black America, and I think for our nation in general. We lost two civil rights legends in Congressman John Lewis and Reverend C.T. Vivian, both from the Georgia area, the state of Georgia and Atlanta area. But just they meant so much to Black people, and the things that we're able to do today is largely because of the fight they had in the 60s. But yet here today, we are still fighting to end police brutality. We're still fighting to end mass incarceration. We're still fighting in many states across this country to end voter suppression. Congressman Lewis died trying to restore the Voting Rights Act that this administration has gutted. Do you think, as a Black man, we're better off in America today?
Oh, I do. I think that there's no doubt that, one, we have two attorneys up there, right there. You, Representative Welch, and you, Representative Buckner, and Representative West as a state rep, and a pastor. I'm a state rep and a former teacher. We are better off because of the life and death of Dr. King and John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis. We are better. And I think that the fights that they had then were different. And yet it seems like we're still fighting for the same outcomes, but they made it possible for us to get where we're at today. So I'm very grateful, and I wouldn't take anything away from the life of Dr. King, Malcolm X, and all of the Rosa Parks and all of our abolitionists. We're better off. We just have to come together as a people and realize that we have the tools in our toolbox to advance.
Representative West, do you agree with that? You know, we're struggling still in this country today, but we're better off than we were during the 60s.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, because none of us were there in the 60s, but just looking at what we see in the history books and the documentaries, we're in a position where people feel they have no choice but to hear what we have to say. It's in their best interest to listen to us and act accordingly. Back then, they felt like they could mobilize themselves against the Black community, but now they're seeing that it's not a wise move to mobilize against, but yet it's better to unify. And we're even seeing that in all the way up to the top with the presidential competition between the two candidates, and how one is a unifier and one is not. And we're seeing how the polls are changing drastically. So yeah, I think we are in a better position. And what's most important is that we capitalize on this to get to a place where we are unified as a country, to get to a place where those who have the mentality of old, they are forced to take a back seat. Because I really feel that this country is big enough for every single one of us.
Rep. Buckner, let me ask you this way. Today in 2020, we have 22 Black people in the Illinois House of Representatives. I think we're about even, 11 men, 11 women. I'm pretty sure in the 1960s, we didn't have 22 Black people in the Illinois House of Representatives. I think so Blacks and women are well represented in the Illinois House by some powerful people. So let me ask you this as a Black man. We know we've made some progress, but as a Black man in America, where do you see we stand in this country and in this state?
Yeah, and thank you for asking it that way too, Chris, because I think that's important. And without talking too many trade secrets, we just had a conversation before this on a Black Caucus call where we had some conversation about the difference between access and opportunity, right? And I think that's at the heart of this conversation. Congressman Lewis, who dedicated his life, 32 or 33 years, I believe, in the Capitol, to moving us along. Reverend Vivian, who Martin Luther King called the greatest preacher to ever live, who actually has an Illinois roots. He grew up in Macomb and Peoria before he moved. He did his first sit-in in Peoria before he moved to Atlanta. And so, I like to say that he's one of us. But while I think, that we have access to a certain extent, we have opportunity to a certain extent, I look at the totality of circumstances, and I'm still very troubled about how much work we have left to do. I am hard pressed to name you one Black community or a number of Black communities in this country that are better off today than they were in 1968 when Dr. King died. When I say better off, I mean healthier, more access to education, and more economically feasible, right? There are probably a few. Silver Spring, Maryland is probably one of them, right? But there are a lot of places where, neighborhoods like the ones that Representative Ford represents, like in Bronzeville here, that were really booming metropolises. But as we see the influx of Black men going to jail, if we see the influx of Black men falling victim to violence, we're in a really precarious situation when it comes to folks that look like the four people on this call.
Hey, Welch, before you say, I have to make sure I step my game up. This Buckner is using a lot of big words today. I never. So next time we get together, I'm prepared for my next year.
I was about to break my dictionary out for a minute.
Oh, man.
I appreciate it. Let me ask you guys a couple more questions. I'm almost at the 30-minute mark, so we're going to go a little bit over, but I only have 3 more questions for you. And I really want to go around real quick. With the death of Congressman Lewis and Reverend Vivian, it just makes me ask this question. Representative Ford, then West, and Buckner. Who in your mind are our Black leaders in this country right now?
The Black leaders in this country are the voters. They're the leaders. Because if it was A. Philip Randolph that went to the president and the president told him, make me do it, he couldn't make him do it. He went to the people, and the people made him do it. when you think about any movement in this country that takes place, it's the people that led the way. We're vessels to help it happen. Those are the leaders. So I encourage the people to empower themselves and push legislators to get the job done.
I heard that. Representative West?
I couldn't agree more, because that's a question that was really playing in my mind. Like, who would be the next leader? But Ford, you're absolutely right. And I tell people in my community, do you know how much power you have, especially now, not just with the vote, but with the census? You make sure we're counted. If we mobilize and we make sure everyone votes, these elected officials will have no choice but to make sure they're in your face, to make sure they're doing what you need them to do, because they know that you'll vote them in or you'll vote them out. So yeah, the voters are the leaders of this. Let's be real. That's the biggest reason why Biden is where he is today. It's because of the black voters. And so yeah, it's the people and exercising their right to vote and making sure they know that there's power in them going to the ballot box.
Rep. Buckner, who's our black leaders in this country right now?
So I'm going to agree with my colleagues with a little bit of a nuance. I'm going to push back on the premise a little bit, just because I think that there are leaders in the African American community, not necessarily leaders of the African American community. And for some reason, we've always thought that we needed this hierarchy or this structure, but no one ever asks who are the white leaders, right? But they always ask who are the black leaders. And so I think the folks who are out here protesting, the young people who are leading these movements, I think the voters, the people who the four of us talk to every day, those are the leaders of our community. Yep. Because they're the leaders in our community.
Last question before I ask us all to close out. And I'll go back to you, Representative Buckner. Midterm, short term, midterm, long term. Try to keep that brief though. What needs to happen in the short term, midterm, and long term to improve our status in the black community here in the state of Illinois?
So I think in the short term, we have to address exactly what the problems are. And then we have to take that analysis and have some real action to it. And then we have to hold people's feet to the fire, whether they look like us or not, to continue to move the ball on that. We have been negotiating our freedom for way too long, and we've been told that we cannot have it all. We can, and we need to, and we will.
Representative West?
Just to take that a little bit further, yes, we need to address the things that our community is crying out for right now. But long term, we need to also do a culture shift, because even though us as policymakers are fighting to change the policy will be null and void if the culture doesn't change. And so we need to have these raw conversations amongst ourselves, raw conversations and vulnerable conversations with people who may not look like us, to unify this state, this country. So, because I'm a firm believer, if the law can change, but if the culture doesn't, it's going to be still an uphill battle.
Hey, see, mate, I actually stole this question from something I saw with your name on it. You've really been out there fighting hard, and you put out some plans on things we need to do. But share with the people what you think short term, midterm, long term we need to do to improve our stature.
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity and prompting me to say that. One of the things that I would recommend is that the governor does an executive order to bring all of his state agencies together to make sure that he understands the problems in the black community. And each agency realizes that they have to address them accordingly, because we pass budgets all the time. And once we pass the budgets, the money goes to the state agencies, and we have to fight to get them to do what we need them to do. But the fact remains, if we don't have a governor and a legislature and all of the agencies working together to have a conscious effort of changing the culture, as Representative West said, we're not going to be able to do it. So let's check the agencies so that they can do what they're supposed to do. That's immediate. The other thing, West is very on point when he talks about the culture. Immediately, also, we must change the history teaching in this. We have to teach accurate history in the state of Illinois, because if we don't teach the accurate history, then the culture is bad. It leads white people and other people to be thinking that they're better, and makes other people feel inferior. And that's how we have what you call white privilege, because our educational system teaches that one is better than the other, and the other one is beneath them. And we have to change that if we're going to fix the racism and discrimination in this country.
Last question before we wrap up. And again, I'll ask it of each of you. We've all been doing what we can from our homes for the most part during this global pandemic. Representative West, Buckner, and then Ford will have you close it out. What are you looking forward to when we move to phase 5, whenever that happens? Something that you want to do that you haven't done these last few months. Representative West?
Man, I'm looking forward to hugging my mom, hugging my dad, hugging my family that doesn't live in my house. That's what I'm looking for the most. And as soon as we go into phase 5 and everyone does what they need to do to make sure that they're safe, yeah, I'm going to embrace them hard. And then from there, I'll decide what's next. But right now, I'm missing the hugs of my mama.
I heard that. Representative Buckner?
Yeah, in that same vein, man, my father, who is actually an ex-police officer, will be 75 next week, and but he's a double cancer survivor and got a lot of conditions that preclude me from embracing him. So being able to actually do that will be that'll be a joy within itself.
Absolutely. Ford Fabulous.
I think that why don't you before I answer it, why don't you do you have phase 5 where the people have to look forward to so that we know? Let me see. I guess
well, phase 5 is like normal. There's a vaccine. Yes. We don't have to wear masks.
Right.
Life is normal again.
Right. So life is normal. The economy fully reopens with safety precautions continuing. So I'm looking forward to taking a long vacation, flying on a plane, and enjoying myself. That's what I'm looking forward to. And you know what? I'll FaceTime my mama.
She'll get a hug later.
You gonna FaceTime your mom from the beach.
Right.
Oh, man, that's cold. That's cold. Hey, well, listen, I want to thank
warm there.
I want to thank you, good brothers, for joining me for this great Sunday afternoon conversation. It's really been an enjoyable conversation, and about our comments and the attendance. People enjoyed it. I want to say this as we conclude on this Sunday afternoon, and as we mourn and honor the death of Congressman John Lewis and Reverend C.T. Vivian. I want to read a tweet that Congressman Lewis wrote on June 27, 2018. He said, "Do not get lost in the sea of despair. Be hopeful, be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never, ever be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble." I know these 3 gentlemen are getting into a lot of good trouble, necessary trouble, and they're doing it on behalf of all of you, the people of the great state of Illinois. And you do not be afraid to make some noise and get in good trouble, because you, the voters, are the ones that's going to make the difference.
Right.
Thank you all, and have
Thanks,
a great
Rob.
day.
Appreciate you.
Take care, brothers.
All right, you too.